What's up, guys? So, you're probably wondering if you should buy a Balisong clone. Don't. Why? Let's talk about that. That's right, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I've had comments requesting that I talk about clones for a long time, and I thought that today might just be the day to do it. In this video, we're going to cover everything from my personal experience with clones up to clones in the modern Balisong era, and what they mean for the community as a whole. Of course, this video was brought to you by my wonderful Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join awesome people such as Akimbo and Coffee Spice on the private community Discord, consider donating. Tiers start at just $3 a month, and every bit helps me reconcile with my fear of the warming Earth causing the end of all known life in the universe. The biggest question on people's minds is,
But Mr. Hirsch, should I buy a clone Balisong?
well, clones are getting cheaper. Some might say they're even getting really good. Hell, you might even be watching this video while flipping a clone yourself. So, should you buy one? Well, the short answer is no. But the long answer is a little more complicated than that, so stay tuned. So, let's start simple.
Mr. Hirsch, what even is a clone Balisong?
That's a good question, Oil Boy. Well, Balisong clones are actually an entire industry, mostly based in China, where designs from other manufacturers are copied and produced by unauthorized companies, usually at a much cheaper price than the original, often with cheaper materials and cutting corners in the production process. Balisong clones range from cheap and poorly made imitations to full-scale productions at factories. There are multiple places these clones are produced, and almost all production is done by anonymous vendors, so it's difficult to actually trace where any one clone may have originated. Clones are available off and on through various Chinese websites like AliExpress and DHgate. The stores that sell them are often changing, so it's difficult to pin down which clone you're actually buying at any given time, or how reputable the seller you are buying from is. This can lead to potential scam scenarios as well as little support if something goes wrong, which is unfortunate.
Pero señor Hirsch, ¿por qué los clones existen?
This is a weird answer with a lot of history behind it. There have been cheap China crap Balisongs for as long as Balisongs have existed, but the practice of actually cloning Balisongs has grown a lot in the past few years. Originally, the first clones were knives of the Benchmade 4X series and things like the M-Tech Twist. They were easy to produce clones that usually had pretty low quality materials, usually stainless steel in a sandwich configuration that would cost very little to the end consumer. As the proliferation of Balisong as a hobby began with companies like Benchmade, Microtech, and Cold Steel, so too did the increase in production and revenue generated by these clone companies. In the earliest days, a lot of these clones were starting to get muddled in with the original knives, either being sold as real by unreputable retailers or being sold off the aftermarket as legitimate. This was a real problem and led to the community having to figure out ways of identifying clones from images alone, which thankfully wasn't too hard at the time. As years went by, a few more Balisong manufacturers crept into the scene, but clones were actually pretty slow to catch up. People like Jerry Home and Squid, and companies like Blade Runner Systems had released a number of knives, but it took a while for those knives to fall into the hands of cloning companies. But of course, they eventually did. This brings us right into the modern era of clone Balisongs. Basically, no knife is safe from being cloned at this point, and clones are being produced at an alarmingly high rate. However, this is happening alongside a huge era of growth for the Balisong community, with an incredible amount of smaller makers popping up every single day, creating awesome products at better and better prices. So, the question this brings us to is,
Well, Mr. Hirsch, I'm a clone. Are clones bad?
there, little one. There are a lot of arguments for why some people like clones and some don't. Some people say they all have terrible quality, while others say that sometimes clones are better than the original. Some people say that there's no support associated with buying a clone, while others have had better support from Chinese companies than the original. But all of these arguments are missing the main point. Clones are stealing. Taking a design that someone else created, even if you change it slightly, and selling it is intellectual property theft. It is stealing, and stealing is bad. There's no other arguments here. You could talk about the impact it may have on profits, or you could talk about how it allows many people to get into the hobby, but at the end of the day, it's still stealing, regardless of your outlook.
But Mr. Hirsch, I bought a clone. Am I a bad person?
Well, yes, but not for that reason. Buying a clone doesn't mean you're stealing, but it does mean that you're supporting companies who do steal. However, I'd be a hypocrite if I ever said someone that bought a clone is a bad person. Look, I get it. You're at a point where you want a specific knife, but you don't really have the money. I've been there. I have bought clones. Clones are actually what got me into the hobby in the first place. I started with terrible CCC knives that I bought at a local thrift shop, before moving on to an Imtech Twist clone. Later, when I was actually getting into the community, I started buying things like a 51 clone, which was pretty terrible, but it was the best thing I had at the time. After that, I got this 42 clone, which I still have to this day. So yes, like many people, I've participated in the terrible stealing machine that clones are. But at the same time, that means that I understand where someone who's looking to buy a clone is coming from. And I have alternatives. You see, in the past few years, the Balisong community has really blown up. There's been an incredible boom of new Balisong manufacturers as well as older companies entering the Balisong market. A few years ago, clones and CCC knives were really some of the only options available if you wanted a Balisong under $200. But nowadays, this just isn't the case. There are so many more budget options available from many reputable companies, and it's amazing. You've got people like Squid Industries selling the Squiddy series for under $50, and you've got Kershaw selling the Lucha for $120, and it's available at most stores in the US. Svix is making some awesome trainers and is currently releasing a great budget option called the Terra. Machine-wise has some incredible options such as the 5T and the Marin, and Atropos Knives in Russia has some of the best EDC Balisongs on the market for the price, as long as you can wait for shipping. The point I'm trying to make here is that at the end of the day, there are so many options now that it's hard to justify buying a clone anymore. Think about it. The Balisong market is growing every single day because people like you are buying from smaller manufacturers and putting money into it. The more money we as a community can invest in the legitimate market, the faster and bigger it'll grow. And so, here's the rub. Do you want to see more cheaper knives made by legitimate companies? Then it's your responsibility to buy what you can from them now and support that future growth, because it can't happen without you. If you see a clone that you want, consider waiting and saving your money until you can buy the original knife. And if you're looking to buy your first Balisong, consider buying something cheap like a Squiddy or a Mako, or even consider the cheap Nabalis trainer that I suggested in the Amazon unboxing video. Believe me, it's much better to use a cheaper Balisong like a Squiddy until you can afford something like a BRS replicant than it is to buy a clone and not support the Balisong community at all.
But Mr. Willer's not gay. Real Balisongs are really hard to get.
Well, yes, that is true. And I've been there. I hate waiting for a knife to drop and then miss it because I was a second too late. However, this problem is getting better every single day as companies get the ability to produce more products, and this of course is driven by the support of the community. So it all comes back to you in the end. So, unfortunately, if you wanted a review of a clone Balisong, it's just not something that I'll ever be doing in the future. Making something like that would be supporting stealing, and as a creator of original content myself, I just can't do it. As I said before, I cannot condemn anyone for buying a clone, and I really encourage the rest of the community to do so as well. The only thing that will keep people from buying clones isn't shame, it's education. That and better availability of cheaper entry options. As a community, this is all of our responsibility to bear, and I believe that we can do it, as we're already on the way. I've watched the Balisong community grow and flourish over the years, from a small underground movement on sites like Jersey Devil to a large and active community hobby spanning many websites and people. The accountability and acceptance I've seen from our community makes me so very happy to be a part of it. The growth that we've had comes down to the support that we show for one another and companies that create the very knives that we enjoy flipping. So, if you share the love for the community that I do, please consider an alternative to buying clones in the future. And if you know anyone who has bought clones in the past, try educating them on the topic rather than chastising them. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. I just wanted to give another big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Every donation helps to keep this channel running and gives me and Brandon the opportunity to put more of our time into producing these videos. So thank you. I couldn't imagine the level of support that we've received from the community over the past year, so I always want to express the full extent of my gratitude.
Hi, it's me, regular Brandon. Yeah, I just wanted to say, this time a year ago, I wasn't even really a part of the Balisong community. I only really joined it around the time that we started our Patreon. So getting to know so many cool people, meet different makers of Balisongs, and just be a part of the community as a whole, for somebody new to it like me, has been really, really, really cool. So you guys being here is really, really awesome.
Also, another way you can support the channel is by visiting willhirsch.gay and checking out our merch. We've got masks and pillows and shirts and more. Oh no. Another indirect way you can show your support is by supporting the Balisong market, because that gives us more things to review. But that's pretty much it for the moment. Now if you'll excuse me, we're gonna go take care of the only clones that matter.